What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop. So over the past month or so, we've been going over the best cut content from every generation of Pokemon, and so far we have covered the first two generations, so today we are going to be covering the third generation and the Hoenn region. The third generation of Pokemon was kind of like a fresh start for the franchise in a lot of ways, because it wasn't really connected to the other generations like the other two generations were to each other. And so because of that, we're going to be seeing different types of content to what we saw in the first two videos. In the first two videos, we saw a lot of groundbreaking cut content, and even though we've got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about here, there isn't quite as much groundbreaking, mind-blowing type stuff, probably also due to the fact that these games aren't as old, and therefore, plain and simple, not as much has been uncovered about them. I did dig up as much as I could possibly find, however, and what I did find is still really interesting, and I'm excited to talk with you guys about it today. So without any further ado, here is the best cut content from the Hoenn region and the third generation of Pokemon. Starting things off, as with any video like this, I'm sure you guys want to know what, if any, cut Pokemon were there held back from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. And even though we don't have a full Pokedex like we did with the first two generations, we do have some interesting things to take note of in this subject. In the beta Pokemon section of Gen 3's cut content, we actually have a lot of Pokemon that did make the final game. However, they didn't make it in the form that we see here, because we actually get to see the process of how these Pokemon evolved over time. Beta sketches are known for a number of different Pokemon, including Torchic, who once had floppy ears, and who once had an egg shape for the bottom half of its body. Moving on from there, we have a very interesting cut Pokemon, I guess you could say, but it's really more of an amalgamation of two final Pokemon from the Gen 3 Dex, Latias and Blaziken. This was also a rather important Pokemon at one point, because we also see a rather important looking character riding this Pokemon. It's unknown what role this Pokemon would have originally taken, but much like Latias, who makes up half of its original design, it's likely that this Pokemon was intended as a legendary. Moving on from that though, we also have beta sketches of both Trico and Groudon, and even though you can't see too much difference from the final product, there are a couple key differences, particularly in the Trico design, that are interesting to take note of. And last but not least, for the beta Pokemon section, we have a Pokemon that was actually cut altogether, and that would be none other than Shellos and Gastrodon from Generation 4. According to an interview with Junichi Masuda, these two Pokemon were originally planned for Generation 3 before they were held back due to some limitations. This is further supported by the fact that back sprites for these two Pokemon can be found in the beta of Pokemon Diamond and Pearl that seemingly combined the East Sea and West Sea variations of these Pokemon into one combined design. Furthermore, in an early prototype version of Pokemon Ruby, there are two Pokemon cries that can be found within the data that went unused in the final game that likely belonged to Shellos and Gastrodon. Moving on from the Pokemon themselves to the Pokedex, we have what was likely the original order for the Generation 3 Pokemon in the Hoenn Dex. This is based on the index number for all of the Pokemon that's found within the game, which can also tell us the order in which they were added into the game, and even though this order matches up for the most part with the order of the Pokedex in the final game, there are a couple notable differences, including the fact that the Ralts, Kirlia, and Gardevoir line were actually much further on in the Pokedex next to the Bagon and Beldum lines, and Chimecho also appears at the very end of this index number order, even after Deoxys, suggesting that it was the very last Pokemon for Generation 3 to be designed and included into the game. In an early demo that was present at the Pokemon Festa 2002 event in Japan, it was actually uncovered that originally not all Pokemon were going to have abilities in the original idea for these games. This is likely the case due to the fact that on Sharpedo's summary screen, who is present in the demo, under the ability section it states that Sharpedo has no ability in the demo. Furthermore, the text string "no special ability" can be found within the data of the game, which suggests very heavily that only select Pokemon were going to get the chance to have an ability, likely similar to how Mega Evolution happens today. Another interesting thing about Sharpedo within the demo is that due to the demo taking place within an early area of the game and Sharpedo's low level within the demo itself, it's likely that its pre-evolution Carvanha didn't exist at this time, and Sharpedo at the time was either a standalone Pokemon or a pre-evolution to something else. Speaking of abilities, there's actually an ability within the data of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald that went completely unused and has not been brought back to this date, and that would be the ability known as Cacophony. Now, there isn't anything too crazy going on here because Cacophony as an ability is identical to the already existing ability Soundproof. However, given the fact that we have a few sound-based Pokemon in Generation 3, including Wishmer, Loudred, and Exploud, it's likely that Cacophony was going to be their signature ability before it was eventually cut. Another thing that can be found within the data of the games is the fact that originally wild double battles were going to take place within these games in addition to the double battles against trainers. However, it seems like this feature was scrapped fairly early on because this mode is not even complete within the data of the games. There is also some very interesting unused trainer data for the evil teams of the Hoenn region, Team Magma and Team Aqua. Starting with Team Aqua, there is data present within the game for their leader, Archie, which consists of him having a level 17 Huntail and a level 17 Sharpedo. This implies that he was originally intended to be battled at an earlier point in the game than in the final, and it also implies that he was going to have a drastically different sort of team with the presence of Huntail. The same is also true for the leader of Team Magma, Maxie, who also has trainer data within the games, consisting of him having a Torkoal and a Camerupt at level 17. This implies the same as it did for Archie, where not only was he originally going to be battled at an earlier point in the game, but with the presence of the Torkoal, it implies that his team in the game was originally going to be significantly different. Furthermore, when looking at the scrapped trainer data, another peculiar oddity can be found because there are two trainers listed amongst this scrapped data that are listed as Magma admins, but one of them has a Carvanha on their team at level 30, and another has a Carvanha and a Sharpedo at level 21, which as we all know are not only water types, but are signature Pokemon of Team Aqua. Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald introduced a lot of game-changing things into the Pokemon franchise, such as abilities and natures. However, there were some other things that Game Freak considered for these games that would have further changed Pokemon as we know it forever. According to Junichi Masuda, the director of the games, Game Freak actually originally considered changing the number of Pokemon the player can have in their party at one point, and the number of moves that a Pokemon can learn at one time. Since it is extremely unlikely that they would have wanted to decrease the number of these things, it's likely that they originally wanted to increase them instead, but likely due to technical limitations, they were unable to implement this change. A rather small thing, but still interesting to note, is that there's actually a map within the data of the game for a Pokemart located within Lilycove City. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because Lilycove City is the site of the department store within the region, meaning that originally the department store was not going to be there, and who knows what kind of effect this could have had on the layout of Lilycove City, or the region for that matter as a whole. And speaking of the layout of the region, something that could have changed the appearance of the region drastically is an unused weather effect that is found within the game for snow. A bit of unused data that can be found within the game and accessed by hacking shows 3 snowflakes falling whenever you exit a building. The effect might be somewhat unfinished as it exists in the game, but in addition to this, there is also an unused border trainer class that, when coupled with this weather effect, suggests even more that there was going to be a snowy area within Hoenn. It's anyone's guess as to where this would have been, but given that there is a giant mountain within the region, or rather a giant volcano, it is likely that the snowy area was originally going to be this mountain before it was converted into the volcano that we know as Mount Chimney in order to better coincide with the tropical nature of the Hoenn region. And last but not least, we have a bit of cut content from these games that is rather peculiar. Once again, within the data of Ruby and Sapphire, a revamped sprite of a character from the game Mendel Palace can be found. Now, on the surface, this might seem a bit unusual because Mendel Palace has nothing directly to do with Pokemon, but in actuality, it's actually a rather nice Easter egg because Mendel Palace is actually the very first game that Game Freak, the developers of Pokemon, ever developed as a studio. And there we have it, everybody. That was the best cut content from the 3rd generation of Pokemon and the Hoenn region. Now, even though we don't have the full picture for these games like we did with the first 2 generations, what we do know in terms of the beta content that was cut is still very interesting because it still shows you how different these games could have been if some different decisions had been made. If you guys enjoyed the video though, be sure to give it a like because it really helps out, and let me know in the comments below which of these pieces of cut content you would have liked to have seen made the final game the most. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and if you'd like to support the channel further, consider following me on Spotify, as that is the easiest way outside of watching videos to directly support the channel, and let me tell you, it makes a big difference, so it is very much appreciated. With all that being said though, I will be back on Tuesday for another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified just as soon as it goes live. And until then, as always, I hope you know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.